What is the one security control that does absolutely nothing until an intruder is already standing inside your building? 2 to 30 minutes. That is how long it then takes, on average, to page a security team, all from a fake password nobody was ever supposed to touch. Not a firewall, not a camera. A single planted lie that waits. And here's the strange part. That fake password sits on the exact same exam objective as concrete posts and glass doors and motion sensors. Keep that in your pocket, because there is a reason CompTIA put a trap and a wall in the very same breath, and it changes how you answer half of these questions.
Hey everyone, Chris here. This is Security Plus Objective 1.2, Physical Security and Deception Technology, and I want you thinking about it as one idea. Every control on this list does one of two jobs. Keep the bad guy out of the building, or catch him the second he is inside.
This objective goes deeper into domain 1 than it looks, because on the exam it is pure vocabulary that has to be exact. That is exactly where people lose points, defining a term on a flashcard and then missing the question that describes it without ever naming it. So we are going to make every word concrete instead.
Hi all, I'm Cynthia. And I want to start with the one that feels like magic because most people have never heard of it. It is called a honeytoken, and it is the deception half of this objective. It is a piece of bait data, a fake login or a fake key, planted somewhere a normal user would never look. A real employee never touches it, so it just sits there, silent. But an intruder who breaks in goes hunting for exactly that kind of thing, credentials to steal. The moment they grab it and try to use it, an alarm fires with their address on it. The bait itself is the tripwire,
which flips the whole mindset. And that is why I love it. Every other control on this objective is built on one hope, that the wall holds. A bollard, a fence, a locked door. All of them assume you can keep the attacker outside. But walls fail. People tailgate, locks get picked, a vendor password leaks. Deception assumes the opposite. It assumes someone eventually gets in, and it lays a trap for that day. So the honeytoken is not asking, how do I keep you out? It is asking, once you are in, how fast can I catch you? That is a completely different security question, and this objective wants you to hold both at once.
And the cruelest detail is how little effort it takes to trip. Picture a fake set of cloud keys sitting in a stolen file. An intruder does not even have to use them for real. Their automated scanner just checks, quietly, is this key valid? That check alone is a call to the real cloud provider, and that call is the alarm.
So the attacker convicts themselves just by being curious. They reach for something that looks valuable, and the reach is the crime. We are going to watch that exact trap fire in a lab terminal later with a real address falling out of it. Hold on to that image, because it is the payoff of the whole episode.
But a trap on the inside only matters after the walls on the outside have done their job, so we start at the street. Before that, if you are studying for this exam, the free practice quizzes for every one of these terms are waiting at certs.professorerica.com, so you can drill the vocabulary the way the test asks it. And a lot of you keep asking the same thing under these videos, so let me hand it to the person who framed it best. Cynthia, you flagged the question everybody has about this objective. Put it to the room.
I did, and here it is, word for word. Physical security feels like the easy chapter, so why does CompTIA test it so hard, and where do people actually lose the points?
And the honest answer is that people lose points because they never made these words concrete. They can define a bollard on a flashcard, then miss the question that describes one without naming it. So we are going to do the opposite. We start at the curb and build a real wall, one layer at a time, until nothing about this list is abstract anymore. And there is one badge in almost every building on Earth that a stranger can copy from 3 feet away without you ever feeling it, which we will prove later with someone who does it for a living. Hold that thought. First, we start at the street and build the wall inward. No single control keeps anyone out, and that is the whole design philosophy behind this objective. Security people call it defense in depth. You do not build one perfect wall, you build a series of rings so that beating one still leaves an attacker standing in front of the next. Picture the rings from the outside in. First the curb, then the perimeter fence, then the building door, then the server room, and finally the locked cabinet holding the actual hardware. Each ring buys you time and forces one more decision on the intruder, and the stack matters as much as any single piece.
Bollards stop the vehicle, and that is ring 1. The bollard is the short, sturdy post you see lined up in front of a store entrance, and it has exactly one job. Behind it climbs the rest of the wall, fence, then vestibule, then guard, then cage, each ring tighter than the last. Here is a real one, and look at what it is actually doing. It is a hard line a truck cannot cross, so nobody rams a vehicle through the front of the building. But the people on the sidewalk walk right past it without a thought. That is the exam's favorite bollard detail. It stops the car and waves the person through.
And I love that it is friendly. A wall says go away to everyone. A bollard only says no to the thing that could hurt people, the 2-ton vehicle, while the family walking in never even notices it is a security control. That is good design, protection that does not feel like a fortress.
Ring 2 is the fence. And I want to be honest about what a fence really is, because the exam is. A fence does not stop a determined person. Anyone can climb one given a minute. What a fence does is deter the casual intruder and delay the serious one. And every second of delay is a second a camera or a guard can use. And this is where lighting earns its place on the objective, which surprises people. Light is a security control. An intruder cannot hide in a well-lit lot, and a camera cannot see in the dark. So lighting deters the person who needs shadows, and it powers every camera and guard you already paid for. Cheap control, huge return.
Ring 3 is the building door, and this is where the objective's trickiest term lives. The access control vestibule. You may have learned it by its older name, the man trap. Same thing, and CompTIA prefers vestibule now, though both can appear on a question. Chris, I know your study group snags on this one every time, so put it to us before I go on.
Yes, and it is the exact argument we keep having. If a building already has a security guard standing at the door, why does it also need an access control vestibule?
Because a guard gets tired and a vestibule never does. Here is a real vestibule. It is a small glass room with 2 sets of doors, and the rule is simple and unbreakable. Only one set can be open at a time. You badge in, the first door opens, it closes behind you, and only then does the inner door unlock. For a moment you are sealed in the middle, alone.
And that lonely little pause is the entire point because of the one attack it kills. Tailgating, also called piggybacking. That is when someone slips in right behind you on your single badge swipe, writing your access without ever showing their own. It is the most common physical breach there is, and it is usually just politeness weaponized. You hold the door.
So picture how it fails without the vestibule. You badge through a normal door, and a friendly stranger with their hands full of coffee catches it behind you. You would feel rude slamming it. That is the whole attack. And your kindness is the exploit. One badge, 2 people, and the building never knew. The vestibule makes that impossible by design. The inner door will not open while the outer one is still open, so there is no held door to slip through. One badge lets exactly one person into the middle, and the room itself enforces it. No guard has to be brave enough to challenge the stranger.
Ring 4 and 5 are the finish line, the server room and the rack. The room gets a lock and often a guard checking badges, and the rack itself sits inside a locked cage. Because here is the mindset the whole scene is teaching. You never bet everything on one ring. If the fence fails, the vestibule catches it. If the vestibule fails, the cage buys time.
That is defense in depth, and it is the single most tested idea on this objective. On exam day, when a physical question offers you one strong control against several layered ones, the layered answer wins almost every time. Now let us get to the door itself, and the humans and cards that decide who walks through it. One thing before the next part, and then we move right on. If any of this is clicking, tap that like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for the next one. It takes a second, it costs nothing, and it helps more than you would think.
A wall decides whether you can get through. A guard and a badge decide whether you are allowed to. This is the human ring of the objective, where authentication meets a physical door instead of a login screen, and the same three factors you know from passwords show up here in the real world. Start with the security guard because the exam still respects the oldest control on the list. A guard is the one control that can think. A locked door cannot notice that your badge photo does not match your face, or that you are sweating and nervous at 2 in the morning. A person can, and that judgment is exactly why guards survive every wave of new technology.
Then the access badge, and this is where CompTIA loves to test the factors. The badge itself is something you have. Add a pin pad next to the reader, and the pin code is something you know. Put a fingerprint reader on the door, and the fingerprint is something you are. 3 doors, 3 factors, and stacking them is multi-factor at the entrance.
And the something you are factor is the one people find almost magical, so let me show a real one. This is a fingerprint reader mounted right on the wall by a door. Your fingerprint, your iris, the shape of your face, none of those can be left at home or lent to a coworker the way a badge can. Your body is the credential, but biometrics are not perfect, and the exam wants you to know the 2 ways they fail. A false rejection turns away a real employee, which is annoying but safe. A false acceptance lets the wrong person in, which is the dangerous one. Every biometric system is a dial tune between those 2, and security leans toward more false rejections and fewer false acceptances.
Now let me break something, because that is what I do. Everyone trusts the badge, and the badge is often the weakest link in the whole building. A huge number of workplaces still use an old style of card, and the way it works has a fatal flaw that the exam is starting to care about. Those old prox cards run at a low radio frequency, 125 kilohertz, and here is the problem. When you wave that card at a reader, it simply shouts its ID number into the air with 0 encryption and no secret handshake at all. It is a card that yells its own name to anyone standing close enough to listen.
So the obvious question is, how hard is it to actually steal that name? Because if it takes a lab in a week, most of us stop worrying. Elena, is this a real threat or a slide threat?
It is a $50 threat that takes seconds, and we called in someone who does this for a living to prove I am not exaggerating. She runs authorized physical break-in assessments. Companies pay her to try to walk into their own buildings. Professor Vance, are you there? How real is the badge cloning problem?
I am here, and it is completely real. On a physical assessment, the badge is usually the easiest door in the building. I stand near a target in a coffee line with a cloner the size of a phone in my bag.
And that is close enough to read the card?
If it is one of the old low-frequency cards, yes. I read it right through a jacket pocket from a few inches away, and they never feel a thing.
So the person has no idea their key was copied because nothing was taken. The original card is still sitting in their pocket, working fine.
Exactly, and that is what makes it so effective. I have not stolen anything. I have copied it. Then I write that ID onto a blank card and walk up to the door and the reader sees a valid employee.
Show us. I want people to see how few steps this really is.
Happy to. This is a handheld cloner in a lab on a card we own. First, I read the target card, and it hands over a facility code and an ID number in the clear, no password asked. Then I write those same numbers onto a blank card. That is the entire attack, 2 commands, and now I have a working copy of somebody's badge in my hand.
So there is the whole exam point in one demo. The card handed over its identity with no encryption, which is exactly why the copy worked. Professor Vance, what actually stops you when a building is done right?
The newer high-frequency smart cards stop me cold. They run at 13.56 megahertz, and instead of shouting an ID, they do an encrypted challenge and response with the reader, so there is no plain number for me to copy. Pair that card with a pin or a fingerprint, and the coffee line trick is dead. My honest caveat: most buildings have not upgraded yet.
And that is the exam takeaway in one line. The badge is only as strong as its technology. An old, unencrypted prox card is a single factor that a stranger can copy from your pocket. An encrypted smart card plus a pin or a fingerprint is real multi-factor at the door. Thank you, Professor Vance, that made the risk concrete.
My pleasure. And remember, the human layer beats all of it. The number one thing that lets me in is a held door, so the vestibule and a culture where people challenge strangers matter more than any card upgrade.
So the door decides who enters. But a door cannot watch the empty room at 3 in the morning. For that, we need the eyes of the building, the sensors and cameras, and then the traps that wait past all of it. That is where we head next. A locked door protects a room while people are in it. Sensors and cameras protect that same room when it is empty and dark, and Objective 1.2 names 4 sensor types you have to tell apart. The trap on every question is that they all detect motion, so you get tested on the mechanism, not the result.
Let me make the 4 human before we grid them, because a sensor is just a sense you already have. Infrared is the sensor that feels body heat. It is the same technology as the motion light over your garage. A warm body moves into a small area and it trips. Limited range, but cheap and everywhere.
Microwave is infrared's big cousin. Instead of feeling heat, it actively beams out microwave energy and watches how it bounces back, which lets it cover a much larger area, a whole warehouse instead of one doorway. The trade-off is it is so sensitive it can trip on movement outside the wall, so tuning matters.
Pressure is the one that does not care about heat or motion at all. It senses weight. It is a mat or a floor sensor that fires when something heavy steps on it. The plate under the museum artifact in every heist movie. Simple, physical, and very hard to fool, because you cannot argue with your own body weight.
And ultrasonic is the sneaky one. It fills a room with sound waves too high for you to hear, then listens for how they echo back. A person moving through the room distorts those echoes, and the distortion is the alarm. The exam separates all 4 by exactly one thing: the mechanism. 2 questions sort every one of them. Does it send something out to work, and roughly how much area does it cover? Infrared feels heat, sends nothing, small area. Microwave beams energy out, large area. That send nothing versus send something split is the tiebreaker on a close question.
So pressure sends nothing. It just feels weight, small footprint. Ultrasonic sends sound out, but stays room-sized, not warehouse-sized. Read the grid, and every sensor question becomes 2 quick checks instead of a memory test. That is the move the exam rewards: understanding over memorizing.
Cameras record and deter, and that is the video surveillance term on the objective. A camera does 2 jobs at once. It deters because a visible camera makes an intruder think twice, and it records so you have evidence after the fact. The modern trick the exam likes is motion-triggered recording, so you only capture clips when something actually moves.
Which matters more than it sounds, because a camera nobody watches is just a very expensive witness. The lesson threaded through this whole objective is that detection is worthless without response. A sensor that trips into an empty guard room. A camera nobody reviews. An alert that pages a team that ignores it. The alarm is only half the control.
Which is the perfect bridge to the second half of this objective: deception. Everything so far watches the doors and walls. Deception technology assumes the attacker already slipped past all of it, and lays traps on the inside, waiting. There are 4 rungs, and they climb from a whole fake system down to a single fake secret.
Top rung, the honeypot. It is one fake system, a decoy server that looks juicy and real but holds nothing valuable. Its only purpose is to be attacked, so that the moment someone pokes it, you know you have an intruder and you get to watch how they operate without risking anything real. Next rung down, the honeynet. That is simply a whole network of honeypots, a fake little company wired together, so a serious attacker who expects to see many machines finds a convincing fake world to wander around in while you study every move. Honeypot is one decoy, honeynet is many.
Then the honey file. And this one gets personal. It is a single bait file named something irresistible like passwords or salaries sitting in a normal folder. No real employee has a reason to open it. So the instant someone does, an alert fires because only an intruder goes digging for a file called passwords.
And the bottom rung is where we started, the honey token. Not a system, not a file, just a single piece of fake data, a fake credential or a fake key, planted and tracked. The instant it is used anywhere in the world, it phones home. Let me show the trap we promised, firing in a lab against a fake cloud key. We planted a fake set of cloud keys in a file, the kind an attacker loves to find. We never use them for anything real. Then we simulate what an intruder's automated scanner does the moment it finds credentials. It quietly asks the cloud, whose keys are these? Watch what that one innocent question does.
And there it is, the whole point of the episode in one line of output. The attacker did nothing but check whether a key was real, and that check convicted them, address and timestamp attached. They never even logged in. Curiosity was the crime, and the trap did not need a single wall to work.
So climb the ladder one more time and lock it in. Honeypot, one fake system. Honeynet, a fake network. Honeyfile, a fake file. Honeytoken, a fake secret. They shrink from a whole world down to a single lie, and every one of them shares the same job. Catch the intruder who already got past your walls.
So we have two whole halves of this objective on the table. The walls that keep people out, and the traps that catch the ones who get in. And there is a real fork every security budget hits, worth an honest debate before we close. You are handed $1 more for physical security. Do you spend it hardening the walls, or setting more traps on the inside? Here's where each of them actually stands, and it is a genuine split. Chris spends that dollar on the wall, on stopping the intrusion before it happens. Alina spends it on the trap, on catching the intruder she assumes is already inside. I will moderate and keep them both honest. Chris, make the case for the wall.
Prevention wins because the cheapest breach is the one that never happens. Fix the vestibule, upgrade the prox cards, add the bollard, and you stop the attack at the door instead of cleaning up after it. Every dollar on a wall pays off against the most common attacks, the tailgater and the cloned badge, the ones that actually walk in every day. And walls protect everyone automatically with no analyst required. A locked vestibule works at 3 in the morning whether or not anyone is watching a screen. A honey token only helps if someone sees the alert and moves. Prevention is the layer that does its job while your team sleeps, and that is why it comes first.
I have watched that plan fail in the field, and here is exactly where it breaks. Walls only stop the attacker you imagined. Every wall you named assumes the threat comes from outside and trips a control on the way in. But the worst breaches walk right past the walls. A stolen vendor password, an insider with a real badge, a tailgater who already got in last week. Look at Target in 2013. Attackers got in through an air conditioning vendor's stolen login, past every physical wall. And here is the gut punch. The monitoring system did fire alerts, and the team did not act on them. Prevention could never have stopped a trusted vendor credential. A honey token on the inside would have screamed the second that credential touched the wrong system.
Hold on, Alina, before you run with that. Push back on the cost. A honey token is only as good as the person who answers the page, and Target proves alerts get ignored. If a team already drowns in alarms nobody reads, is another clever trap, not just more noise?
Fair hit, and it is the strongest argument against me. But a honey token is different from ordinary noise, And that is the whole reason it works. A normal alert might be nothing. A misconfiguration, a tired admin. A tripped honeytoken has no innocent explanation. Nobody has a legitimate reason to touch a fake key nobody was ever issued. So it is the one alert a team learns to never ignore.
And honestly, hearing that, we are closer than it sounded. I am not against traps, I am against skipping the wall to buy them. If your vestibule is broken, a honeytoken just tells you the intruder is already at the server. I would rather stop him at the door and catch him if he slips. Prevention first, deception as the backstop.
That I can shake hands on. Walls shrink how often someone gets in. Deception shrinks how long they stay once they do. That everything on walls and a single stolen password owns you for months undetected. That is target. That everything on traps, and you invite attacks you could have simply prevented. Neither one alone is a security program.
So here's the verdict, and it is the one this objective was built to teach. The frameworks would not list physical controls and deception technology in the same breath if either replaced the other. CrowdStrike frames deception as the layer that catches the attacker already inside, precisely because prevention will always eventually be beaten. The published guidance never says wall or trap. It says wall and trap, so spend that dollar to fix the most likely wall first, then fund the trap that catches the day the wall fails. If you remember one rule from this whole objective, make it this. A wall keeps them out, a trap tells you they got in, and a real defender needs both. On the exam, when a physical question offers you one perfect control, the layered answer is almost always the right one. Quick recap. Physical security is layered, curb to cabinet. Bollards stop vehicles and a vestibule kills tailgating. Sensors and cameras watch the empty room, and past all of it, the deception ladder catches whoever slips through.
The one that sticks with me is the coffee line clone. An old prox card yells its ID with no encryption, and a $50 copier reads it through your pocket.
And here is what you can actually do tonight, and it costs nothing. Stop holding the door for the stranger with their hands full. That polite habit is the #1 physical breach there is, and you closing it is a real control.
Next episode, the one paperwork control that quietly prevents the outages nobody blames on security until it is too late. Wait until you see how a single unapproved change takes down a whole network.
If this finally made Objective 1.2 click, hit like and subscribe so the series keeps building toward your pass. And the free practice quizzes for every term today are waiting at certs.professorerica.com.
Here is the one we could not settle. One budget for your own office. Would you harden the doors or plant traps on the inside to catch whoever gets past them? Tell us which and why in the comments.
Now take what you learned and go make it count. This is Professor Erica signing off.